What an episode, right? That was a good one. I liked it. Top tier, The Curse episode, episode 8. We got to see more of Whitney manufacturing her appearance, trying to, you know, show herself off as a pleasant artist who's helping the community of Española, trying to show her artsy side by manufacturing this little party here. We'll get to it. We'll get to the breakdown. But yeah, I enjoyed this episode. We got also a little date with Asher and Dougie. Um, get the relationship builds more. It's kind of like a love hate relationship right between them two, right? Like Asher's kind of like uh, has really no close friends, right? And so he's kind of has to settle down with being bullied by Dougie, and that's just really the only thing he can grasp onto as far as it comes to having friendship. Um, Interesting stuff. We got more into the name of the show, The Curse, when they go visit Nala and her family. And we definitely did get to see the veil come down when for Whitney. Like the facade was totally dropped in that little outburst she had when she was mocking um, Asher, you know, after Fernando pays a visit. So we got to see Whitney a lot clearer this time. And I'm sure we'll see more of that coming up. And but let's get into the breakdown and go step by step, scene by scene, and really dig deep, right? As much as I can in this little improvised breakdown here. But yeah, there's a lot to get into here, and let's put up that video. Take away that. Put that up. Here we go. Here is the breakdown. So we start off this episode um, with a cold open, as usual. But it's from these characters we haven't seen before, right? It's these rich kids, apparently, right? It's pretty apparent that their little asinine conversation about cheating and dating and such as young teenagers do, I guess. Um, and they're in this nice car, right? Driving down Española into the city or the town of Española. But it's pretty clear that like, okay, these are the kids of of the rich parents who've moved into this area, right? It's like a sign of gentrification is these like rich kids hanging out and imposing themselves onto the community. And basically, they're chatting about stealing these jeans from Oshaka Jeans, Whitney's jeans store. And so it's revealed that hey, these are the people behind the kids behind all that theft, and this is the consequence of Whitney just giving out, letting the clerk here use the credit card to pay off all the stolen merchandise, right? And she herself is like, I thought perhaps maybe she would, you know, have her friends come in, or you would, she herself would use a credit card, but she's a little bit, because she works there, she's a little bit more concerned about it. While these kids, who are probably bored, um, are just taking advantage of this little store here. They can get away with just walking in, grabbing a bunch of stuff, and walking out. No, no biggie. And she explains that that's just what the landlord Whitney uh, told her to do. Like, let's not involve the police, etc. And I guess it just kind of goes to show also like a lot of this like petty theft and crime. While there is like organized crime and a lot of people There's a population of, even like homeless people or people or just poor people who steal merchandise at stores in order to sell them for some profit. When it comes to like these gentrified areas, a lot of times it's just like, rich people themselves are just rich kids. They're just who are the ones stealing, as we've seen in like particular celebrity scandals in the past of just like, I'm not gonna name any names, but the particular celebrities are people who are already rich and they just like have this kleptomania who like to get away with things because they can. Um, but so it's kind of just an ironic thing of like Whitney wanting to like help the community and not arrest the poor people who are trying to get by and maybe have to steal. When in fact it's like mostly these rich kids having a laugh, and they even don't even call themselves rich, right? He's like, oh, I wish I was rich too, to the clerk who's like, of course, working this likely minimum wage job here. Maybe when he's paying her a little more, but certainly not enough to get her out of being poor, right? And and then he's like, oh yeah, I wish I was rich like my parents. I'm not rich, but my parents are rich, which is just kind of silly things a teenager or a young dude would say. uh, Not realizing that he has all this privilege because of his parents, right? And if your parents are rich, then you're rich too, pretty much. And it also kind of like resembles Whitney's situation, who she wants to get away from the shadow of her parents, who are these rich slumlords, landlords who exploit their tenants. She doesn't want to be like that, so she doesn't want to be associated with that. So it's kind of like these kids probably don't want to be associated with the image of privilege and wealth, right? Because they want to be cool, so they go and steal some jeans. But it's all just like fake, inauthentic, just facade people have, right? Including those teens. But then like we got Fernando here showing up with his posse here with guns, looking all tough, to bring this to light. Like, hey, like they noticed that people are just stealing all this stuff, right? And so and they definitely have certain points here, right? They're like they don't want to introduce organized crime or like that into the community. They feel like Whitney is letting that happen. She's complicit in it, and she's trying to defend it and be like, hey, no, like these are just petty thefts. No one's being hurt. It's better to do that than to call the police. But he feels like it's going to tarnish the community. It doesn't seem like he's aware that like a lot of those thieves are just like rich kids, right? We haven't seen all the theft. We did see in the previous episode a woman who seemed like she wasn't. She was just part of like she probably wasn't rich, right? She wasn't. She ended up being arrested, and Whitney tried to stop it, but she was too late, and that's what led to the idea of her like letting the clerk use the credit card for thieves to pay the product that thieves take. But he's always really mad because he feels like this is gonna like just lead to more crime and probably bring in some bad folk into the community that he lives in. He doesn't want, just part of the gentrification process. He sees as a bad thing for his hometown, right? And of course, Whitney's like, they're like exaggerating, like I can't believe it. Asher's like was all being all defensive, as he usually is, trying to show like to portray himself as a good husband. But obviously, when he's like, oh, they weren't seriously gonna hurt them, and so kind of blows off Asher's defensiveness there. She like reveals that they spent like what 14K. She spent 14K of those stolen jeans. kind of brushes it off. And then she's like, okay, well, after the show's done, we'll just start charging them rent, which just goes completely against what she was wanting to do in the first place, right? To provide some more jobs to the community, to be a good part of the community, right? Not exploit the community. But at this point, she's kind of let her guard down, she's let her facade down, and now she reveals herself to be uh, just more of a self-interested person, right? Not really too concerned about the community at this point, because she probably kind of has lost faith in the community, because she, in a way, has always been naive. She thinks like she said that I thought better of people. I thought they wouldn't, take advantage of my kindness, of not calling the police and just letting them steal. And now, Asher's like saying like, oh, like this is not what you wanted, right? Like why now you're turning back on your ideals, right? And she just starts mocking him, and this is the point where we truly see Whitney's, dark side, right? She's mocking Asher for being goody two shoes, thinking like, oh, like I'm a good guy, but really, he's not. He's as complicit as her in a lot of ways, and just goes to show the versatility in Emma Stone's acting here. How she could, go from being like a nice ally to the community to just her reality being a self-interested, annoyed Karen type of person, right? In reality. Who makes fun of Asher for pretending to be good, to be the good guy. And it seems like Asher's like pretty shocked by her acting this way. So it might indicate that this is maybe the first time she's actually exposed herself, Whitney, to him. But I feel like she's had these little outbursts before, and we just haven't seen them, right? And like we've seen Asher blow up and get angry at certain moments, impulsively, and start screaming and cursing at people, like we've seen in previous episodes. Whitney probably has those little moments where she mocks Asher and other people, but behind closed doors, And it's just like the first time we're seeing her at this extreme, right? And then now we have the next scene where it's finally time for Asher to have his little sit down and talking head interview moment for the show. While Whitney is about to head off to her little art party she's going to, because she wants to portray her, have scenes in the show, in the philanthropy show, where she's actually interested in the art world, in the art, and being an artist, not just a house flipper, right? Like she wants to portray herself as a genuine artist, as part of the art community there as well, and where she's trying to, I guess, mingle with other artists in the community, which in reality is just like a little get together for this rich collector who's looking to maybe buy some of Kara's art and some other art from the artist there. But she's going to take advantage of that little situation to make herself look good, And so she's asking for a camera. Like he doesn't really want to be there. He doesn't really take it that seriously. As we see later, it's just going to be some B-roll for him. He doesn't really think it's that important for the show, I don't think. So she's going to be there by herself with the camera dude. We'll see later. But right now, this is what Dougie's really interested in. He wants to really jab in on on Asher here, and get his reaction to the idea of him. Perhaps, what if you weren't with Whitney, And as a contrast to the previous interview he had with Whitney, who she said that she has, implied there was issues with her marriage. There's marriage trouble. So he wants to continue with that drama, right? To make that the show more interesting to him. And of course, Asher doesn't really want to talk about it too much. It's an interesting scene because it's basically he's coaching him in a way on how to deliver the lines how he wants it for his show, right? So it's like he's like kind of, it's a reality show, but it's also like directed by Dougie, as if it was in a way for him to get the story that he wants, right? So that it blurs the line, like most reality TV, between fact and fiction, right? And it's just interesting how he kind of like almost like it almost feels like a coercive way of like getting him to say what he wants, and we get the impression that it's a grueling process because he gets tired. He's like, oh, let's take a break. He doesn't want to get into certain things, but Dougie, being his Dougie way, gets the words he needs out of him. And there's some interesting shots here too of like the camera, how it like pans, like right here. Really interesting stuff too. The little monitor here. Different like it's almost like a fourth wall breaking, very like meta way of filming that the show has become accustomed to, it seems. And it is also kind of awkward, just the staging or this framing of the shot too, of like the people in the background not even facing in different directions, which I guess is realistic how it'd be like on set, right? They're like the sound guy's monitoring the sound, some other guy in the back is doing who knows what, probably looking at some monitor, while Dougie is in the interviewer seat. They talk briefly about the audio setup, the speakers in the house. I think he does this just to get Asher more comfortable, and then they go into a little secret Asher told him right before this, that he wanted to see Whitney have sex with another guy. Basically, that's one of his fantasies, and he doesn't quite know how to approach that conversation. And it was a secret he told to Dougie, as he does, and Dougie tends to. Asher should know this by now, but Dougie tends to reveal these secrets or use them for his own for the lols and to get some reaction out of Dougie or other people, right? That's kind of just Dougie's personality. And of course, Asher gets uncomfortable and visibly mad, and Dougie's like plays it off. Oh no, it's just a joke. I'm just joking. You didn't really say that. And he tells the crew, right? He's like, oh no, that I was just poking fun of him, getting a rise out of Asher for I guess the cameras. But yeah, that just goes to show more of the type of character Dougie is, which is just an asshole, really, right? And yet, after this, Asher and Dougie, Asher feels like he needs to at least build a friendship, and like that's the only friend he has, really. Meanwhile, we've got the Kara and her friend here at the diner, just having a chit chat. She's telling her friend about Whitney, and just like the wild little stories, and how Whitney is paying her for her art, and how she's like has to kind of compromise for the paycheck a little bit, and sometimes you got to put in sometimes some FaceTime with people you don't necessarily like, because you gotta pay the rent, etc. And so when he shows up, she calls her. She's like, "Oh, I'm in the area. Let me tell you more about how Fernando came over with the guns." Doesn't really explain it in detail. She kind of makes it out to seem like Fernando's a little more crazy than he actually is. And Clara, of course, doesn't prod too much, because she still wants to kind of maintain that professional relationship with her, because of course she could get more money off of Whitney in the future, probably, and she wants to maintain that relationship, right? While her friend here is a little bit less concerned and starts acting like a stereotypical native person you would see in a movie or something, to see if Whitney picks up on it, and of course she doesn't. She doesn't really mention anything. She actually says that's a little weird, so maybe she does in her head feel like something's off, but she doesn't dare comment on it, in fearing, because she fears she'll probably be insensitive or something, or if she calls out this guy's behavior, right, as like being fake or something. And she's probably even thinking it's probably some realness to it, right? But in reality, he's just, it's like an in-joke with him and Kara, right? The idea of like all these white people think that all native people are all these like spiritual, mystical, wise, slow talking, types of people who are connected with nature, and say, weird things with in relation to animals and spirits and stuff, and like, praying to the spirits as they're about to like consume their burrito, which is like just like a hilarious like satire of the whole thing. And so when he invites them, and he's like, sure, I'll go, and he's planning to like, play up that whole stereotypical image of the native person at the party for his own kicks and laughs, right? While Kara's like, oh shit, don't make this weird for me, or like, don't be too obvious about it, because she wants to still maintain a relationship with Whitney, it seems, right? Although, we'll see she has mixed feelings about it at the end of the episode. And we're back to Asher and Dougie. I guess this is the scene where he brings up the idea, the secret of him wanting to see another man sleep with Whitney. And we've seen that like he's unable to, because of his insecurity of his small penis, which has been clear throughout this season, this series. He feels inadequate, and that's part of his fantasy, right? Like, he doesn't feel adequate to satisfy Whitney, so he wants someone else to satisfy her, and while he watches, which Dougie makes fun of. Of course, he pretends it's like, oh, that was just a joke for the cameras. Asher doesn't really have that fantasy. And then we have another awkward moment here where Asher's pretty much asking Dougie to go hang out with him, right? It's like, oh, I'm kind of, what are you up to tonight, etc., etc. Dougie's like, is that what you wanted to ask me? I can tell you wanna go out, right? And Dougie indulges, because he's also pretty lonely, as we've seen before. That moment where he was crying in his hotel room. He wanted to hang out with Asher before in like episode 1 or 2. And now it's kind of full circle, and now it's Asher who awkwardly wants to hang out with Dougie, because even though Dougie has bullied him all his life, it's the only friend he's had his whole life, pretty much, it seems, and he's like opens up about it here. And this scene here, like, he apologizes to Dougie for like treating him not so well throughout, and not acknowledging the friendship they had. And to me, it does seem like Asher is putting on some kind of is acting here, right? He's like putting on a performance almost, like to get on Dougie's good side. Like, oh, see, look, I'm not to show like that he's not upset that Dougie's making fun of him and stuff. So I feel like Asher seems to have some kind of ulterior motive here. Maybe he just wants to get on Dougie's good side to hopefully get Dougie to stop making fun of him. Or there's also part of him genuinely that I think just wants to have a more intimate connection with Dougie, with somebody in general besides Whitney, who we've seen they're definitely having troubles, right? But Dougie keeps kind of like brushing it off, like, oh, it's no big deal, thanks for apologizing, but let's move on, etc. Let's get to the food. So it seems that Dougie doesn't really want to get too intimate. He doesn't really want to like express his emotions as much as Asher's trying to as here. Like Dougie's definitely uncomfortable with that. And that's just his character there, right? We're back to Whitney. She's arrived to the art party. Doesn't need to be many people there right now. She's early, I guess. Marjorie's here. Shows her some cookies she made, and then we're introduced to Vivi, right? This is the collector whose house this is his house, and he's just gathering his art acquaintances, and they're all there in the hopes of selling more art to him. That's the whole deal here, right? And then it's kind of revealed that like, oh, he's also a weapons contractor. He's also like involved with the military and weapon manufacturing or selling of weapons, of armaments and stuff like that, for the military, etc. So he's not like as a typical rich folk tend to be. They're not squeaky clean, and artists have to like contemplate like, oh, should I sell my art to this person who probably is complicit in the killings of people around the world, because they're involved in weapon sales for either like private contractors or military that are killing off civilians in the name of war and territory, et cetera, et cetera. And so, perhaps another comparison between him and even Whitney, who like her money comes from her parents who exploit tenants and who are just awful landlords, right? So like these rich people may be providing a way for artists to make a living, but at the same time that money comes from bloody hands as well. So it all kind of like comes full circle there. And then this scene was interesting too. We got the one cameraman who Dougie sent over, right, to shoot the B-roll. Whitney was expecting a bigger crew, a better sound, and she kind of like actually is thinking, okay, maybe this is actually good. She kind of justifies it, like maybe we just want some B-roll and I'll talk over it, in post, and it'll be better because we don't have to actually like record the actual conversations, and we can actually make it look better in post. So she kind of goes with it, and of course this guy is just is just there to shoot. He has 2 hours. He's like, I just want to get this done. I don't really care so much about it. I'm just here for the paycheck, right? And I've been in situations like that too, where I'm like the camera person who's like just there to shoot, and not as concerned or don't think this is like that big of a deal or that interesting, really. We're just there to shoot and get that money. And then we get back to the dinner, and just some silly conversations here. Dougie calls in for that chicken. It says he didn't order it. Asher's like, wait, this is a joke? I didn't order a chicken. And of course, it's Dougie. He was just joking around, bringing up the whole chicken curse situation. And I think he still denies the thing that he did. He still denies putting the chicken in the firehouse bathroom. But they go into discussing the curse thing, and like how Asher feels like, oh, didn't you kind of believe in the curse? Like, I thought you were kind of into that superstition stuff. And Dougie's like no, and he thinks it's just silly, and he wants to kind of prove to Asher like, hey, like, this chicken curse thing is nonsense, and you shouldn't be worried about it. And Asher's like saying like, oh, actually, this guy, the father of Nala, was like saying how like he doesn't want even to say curse in his household. Like, there's more superstition in his, his worldview, in his culture, etc. But it seems that Asher does feel like there's something going on, right? Like, and Dougie senses that, so he wants to kind of disprove it. And so they kind of like this, and then they're discussing also like who's gonna drive home, right? And Asher gets that text like, oh, like that family needs the alarm for the smoke detector, the battery changed. So he has to go do that, which is, I guess, decent of him for like going right after the dinner, right, and not like waiting for the next day. But also, like, he revealed that he put in like a used battery, which is pretty shitty of him to do, right? And he even admits it was pretty dumb. Like, he should have just put in a fresh battery. And so they decide to go there, and Dougie, is like, oh, I'll drive. You can drink as much as you want. Don't worry. I only had a couple beers, whatever. I'm fine. And he even tells the waiter here like to bring in rum and put in some rum in the Coke, and put it in a cup that looks like just a regular Coke cup, right? Like what alcoholics would do to get their alcohol and make it look like they're just drinking regular soda, right? And this kind of just is a little bit of tease of like, oh shit, like, are we gonna have a drunk driving accident coming up? Again, it's kind of like echoing what we saw in an earlier episode where Dougie was on a date and he was driving drunk and he had to pull over because he was too drunk, right? So now it's like, okay, was that foreshadowing? Are we about to get into something, get into an accident here? Are we gonna get hurt here? Is Asher gonna get hurt? Like, well, I don't know. All these things are racing through my mind, right? But we cut back to the party, and this is just like, a fun shot of like of Whitney just like being a movie star almost here, right? It's like acting out like, oh, I'm just strolling around this nice house looking at the art, hanging out with my art friends, and this whole scene here is just like absurd and just probably one of the more funny things on the show. Just the stage and manufactured state of all this, and how like in her head Whitney is unaware of how silly she looks, right? Or maybe unconcerned about how silly she looks, and fake, because that's what the show is really a major theme. Like, what's fake, what's real, we put on these facades for probably social media, TV show, etc. But also in our real interactions with real life people, when there's no cameras around, we also have a certain facade to portray ourselves in the best light, right? How we want to be seen. But this is just an extreme version of of this, where this rich woman Whitney can put on a whole show about it to make herself look a certain way. And what I also found interesting too was the soundtrack here, which is really odd and like funky, weird. Let's put the music on, the sound on. I guess it's like kind of illustrates just how kind of just it pinpoints exactly like how absurd it is by putting on this like weird music in the background that's kind of like artsy fartsy but bad. And it syncs up right when she goes up to talk to Kara's friend here, who's like acting like a stereotypical native.
Brett.
Just that like that's so weird.
Brett.
Anyway, so she talks to this guy here, and he's like, going all out, putting on performance here, and Whitney is thinks it's great. She's like, oh, this is probably gonna look good for my show that I'm talking to a native member of the community, and he's putting on the show, blah blah blah, and all she can say to it is, "That was so beautiful," which is a recurring thing, right? I think she said that to him earlier in the diner too, when he said some nonsense. And so she's obviously not really engaging with the community, with the people here. She's pretending to, really, and she doesn't really quite see that this is pretty shitty or awful or a bad thing. She's like, oh, like it's okay because it represents what I really am inside. She's like, her inner mind is like, even though this is all staged and it's big artifice of this whole thing, like she feels like it's representative of who she really is, and so that's okay. So that's all that matters. She sees it really as like an art piece about herself, like this show in a way. But of course she's oblivious in a lot of ways to how people see her, which is that she's fake. Just a fake ally. And so we get back to Dougie and Asher. They're gonna go pick up some batteries at the store. So he actually, Dougie brings out the breathalyzer self-test here, and again we're like, as viewers, nervous, like, oh shit, is are they gonna have to pull over again? It's very deliberate, this whole scene. Like they want us to feel tense, right? Both of these people here, Safdie and Fielder, who are the people behind this scene and show, right? And luckily it's a green light, so he's just under the limit. I think the limit to be considered drunk is 0.8, and he's at 0.78. So it's a-okay, he can drive. And then the tension is kind of relieved a little bit now that we cut to the convenience store. So for now, we're a little bit more relaxed, and Dougie, of course, comes in being his Dougie self, makes fun of Asher, says like, "Oh, I'll buy you this gay porn mag," while Asher denies that he wants it. Dougie's just continuing his joke, his practical joke here, and he goes ahead and gets, as we see there, he gets the the magazine. Um, and so this is more of Dougie just like being just the bully that he is, uh, making fun of Asher, and it all relates to the idea of Asher again, feeling feeling inadequate because of his small penis, right? Um, and so he makes fun of him here, like showing off the magazine, is telling him that like, oh, actually, like a woman would probably prefer your size of penis because these ones in these magazines would probably hurt them, etc., because they're so big, etc. So more dick jokes, but they get back into the idea of the curse that that Asher is all concerned about, right? So Dougie has this idea of, okay, well, I'll go in and help with the switching of the batteries, and I'll go talk to the girl Nala, and I'll have her put a curse on me. That way, I'll show you it's stupid. It's false. It's not a real curse, and we'll check and see if the chicken is gone when we come back. And if it's not gone, then that proves that she has no magical powers, and you don't have to worry about the curse, and you can move on with your life. That's Dougie's plan, which Asher's reluctant to. But he goes along, right? Because he wants to like he wants to build this relationship with Dougie. He wants to still be friends and at least get on Dougie's good side, maybe. And then they bond a little bit with this song here from Dead Prez, which is a hip hop duo from the 2000s, and I think maybe the 90s as well. But it's the typical scene of these white dudes rapping not great, quoting these lyrics, and it's awkward as well because they're like, he's like, instead of saying the N word, he says the N word in the lyrics as he's singing, which again, like a liberal ally doesn't want to use racist language, so he says N word, which makes sense, but the meaning of the song is kind of lost when these like two white assholes are like singing it in their car here, right? That song is called Hell Yeah. In parentheses, Pimp the System. I'm reading here from the genius.com description, and it says, Hell Yeah is about surviving by any means necessary. In this case, by exploiting the holes in the current economical system. And as well, on the Wikipedia, it says that on Hell Yeah, Dead Prez declares, in quotes, is one of the lyrics, fuck welfare, we say reparations. So, this song has a lot of political themes in it. And, it's about the struggle of living in poverty and doing what you can to get by, et cetera, which is, ironic because like Asher and Dougie are kind of using the system for their benefit as well, but they're benefiting from their privilege, while singing this song, which is like the opposite of that, right? And the album itself is actually called, that the song is from, is called Revolutionary But Gangsta. And so in a way they're kind of like, it kind of echoes the scene in the opening, right, of like the young rich kids, the white young rich kids infiltrating the community in a way, and as they are to Dougie and Asher. appropriating from other cultures, um, without much concern, right? Um, and so, that's a bonding experience, an awkward sing along there. And then they get to the house of Sheer and his daughters here, um, and to switch out the batteries of the smoke detector. Um, and Asher gets pretty mad at Dougie for trying to even coming up with this plan, and like, he's like, oh, you can't go to Nala's bedroom. You can't. That'll be too weird. Let's just get this done and get out of here. Pretty much is what Asher's telling Dougie, and Dougie's contemplating like, oh, how can I get this to work? How can we get this to work? Um, and then we're back here at the house, the Artie house. Um, we got Whitney just browsing through a coffee table book, a guest book, something, for the B-roll. When this guy approaches, now this guy's wearing that headpiece that is it that what they were wearing in one of the early episodes where Whitney stumbles into this this religious ceremony, and it was like a Sikh religious ceremony, and that would seem to be a lot of white people, almost like cosplaying as these in this ritualistic ceremony. And then later on, we see a scene. I think last episode, we saw some protesters on the road saying how like they were, it was a false yogi, a fraudulent yogi. So like these people seem to either be they're like appropriating the Sikh religion, to perhaps take advantage of the rich folk who have moved into the town, right? And there's a lot of cult elements to it. This idea, like, oh, what's really going on with this? Are we going to see more of this group later? He even like offers her grapes, but he does. If you repeat it and hear it, I'm pretty sure he says rape, right? He's like, because she's like surprised that he cursed, and he thought that, they were, more proper, etc. But he says that, oh, it would surprise you, who we are and like what we do, all the things we could still do, even though I guess he's like, again, appropriating the Sikh cultures, the Sikh religion. And then he's like, he offers her a grape and he says rape, for example. He says that, and then she's like, excuse me, what did you say? Because that's really like weird and a dark thing to say, horrible thing to say. But he says, oh, I said grape, and he pulls out a grape, So I feel like we may see this group again, doing some nefarious thing, maybe even in the news. It's like, oh, like at the end of this series, all the consequences of Whitney and Asher coming in to like, sell these eco-friendly homes, has also introduced all these awful people, whether it's like these rich kids who are stealing from the community, or this like fraudulent Sikh community, religious folk who are taking advantage of the community as well, like, and probably even doing nefarious things, like offering grapes. And so, she's kind of flirting with him, right? Fully aware of the camera there, and none of the audio is being recorded, I think, right? It's just like the visual stuff. So she's like, he's going to show an elevator, supposedly, and they both know it's not. It's just a closet or a bathroom, I think. And he's like, oh, only room for two. And it's a little awkward moment here where the camera guy's like, okay, now what? and they come out pretty quickly, but you get there's a suspicion here. She comes out laughing, and it's just a little joke for the camera, or like for the scene, like, oh, like I went in and I cheated with my husband, I cheated, and I maybe we did something a little risque inside, ha ha ha, funny funny, or is it more like, no, he was just showing me around. In reality, I you know without the camera there was some more, maybe more aggressive flirting happening in that bathroom. Maybe they made out. Who knows? We'll never really know, right? Because the cameras weren't there, and I guess just like this show is shot as if, almost like as if it's a documentary the whole time. Even like this camera angle here is like far away. Often like the camera is obscured a little bit by like a window, like here or something like that. Um, so it's like this is like one of the first times it's like almost acknowledging, like, hey, like something's happening off screen, and they just decided not even to put a camera in the bathroom. So like, in a way, the scene's just playing more with that idea, the aesthetic of the show, and and the idea of like what's happening off screen, what's reality off screen, what's reality when is it reality if it's on screen, what's real, what's fiction, etc., etc. How devious of a person is Whitney? Is she, you know, does it say something about the audience that we believe that Whitney's gonna cheat so easily? Um, like what does that all mean? It's interesting little scene there. So we go back to um, the house here, the battery situation, and Dougie has this plan of like, oh, let's like switch the batteries and all the smoke detectors. That way he can get into the to Nala's room here and get her to curse him. And he just hands Asher like a bunch of Kleenex, just a little bit, you know, a little bit filthy, right? Like kind of disgusting. Oh, here's a what used Kleenex or something from his pocket, or napkins or something, and like pretends that those are the batteries. And Asher plays along, even though he kind of criticizes Dougie about it. He still plays along, and now we get a scary moment here. The dad gets called away, um, so Dougie can oh yeah, Dougie's like, oh, can you he tells Asher to go do something, go down, oh, turn the TV down. He says turn the TV down because he wants to hear the alarm, make sure it works properly. um, and of course the dad's like gonna, of course you're gonna want to like be vigilant when a strange man is in your daughter's room. um, mm, but then just a small family arguments about doing homework, and then Dougie sees the opportunity. He wants Nala to curse him. Of course, he's frightening her, and he's, doesn't really is unconcerned about it, or is unaware about how frightening he seems to this little girl. Like, dude, like you're a creep. But he doesn't care. He just wants. He says he needs it, and he actually like starts crying, um, which is interesting because I guess like just like Asher wants to connect with Dougie, Dougie also wants to connect with Asher at a fundamental level, but in his way of doing it is by performing, doing these little plans and these little, and maybe like do these little jokes and stuff, and this is his way of connecting with Asher, right? Um, and so it's really, it means a lot to him for her to curse him, and of course that creeps her out. She yells for her father, and then that whole thing backfires, and I do think that there is some reality to him sobbing, like I mean, like, you could say that he's like putting on performance to get her to curse him. But as we've seen before, we have seen him cry, in earlier episodes. So he can get emotional, and I think that is part of his character. So, he's just like, oh, it fell down. She got scared, and Asher goes and puts it in. And the father is concerned, of course, and she's just like, oh, he just cried, which is weird. Maybe the father should have poked more and prodded a little more about exactly what happened. But I guess he's satisfied with that explanation. And, of course, he was concerned. But so now we go back. The chicken is still there. But Dougie's like, oh, she didn't even curse me, so it doesn't matter. Like, she just screamed. I mean, you could kind of consider her yelling out. It wasn't a language that Dougie didn't understand, so maybe he could have interpreted that as some kind of curse. But no, she was just screaming out, right? And so he doesn't feel like the plan was successful. And then they start having a little argument there, and Asher's like, oh, like, this is shitty, we shouldn't have done that. I can't believe you made me do that. And Dougie's like, oh, well, like, stop pretending like you're such a good guy. You went along with it too. Like, you accepted my Kleenex and pretended to put batteries in there. And then, Asher bites back by, like, basically bringing up how, like, oh, like, you're pretending to be good, you more than I am. You're the one who, like, basically killed your wife because of your drunk driving, which Asher then kind of retracts a little bit. Feels like he went a little bit too far there. And he's like, sorry about that. And Dougie, that shuts Dougie down right away. And he's kind of like, okay, whatever, let's get out of here. And when they get back, they kind of like, they're all quiet here, but they kind of like apologize to each other and like, okay, let's forget about that. Asher wants them to forget about it. It was a fun night before that, right? They were just having a good time having dinner. And Dougie's like, yeah, sure, I'll forget about it. It's fine, whatever. Because he even says, like, oh, it's better to have more friends than enemies in this world, right? So I think Dougie's like, okay, well, let's just put that behind us, and it's better if we just, like, stay friendly, right, and not escalate things. But you have a sense that things will escalate later, and maybe we'll be seeing a harsher confrontation between them two in the future, right, in the coming episodes. And then as Asher walks in, Dougie curses Asher. I curse you, he says, right? As a cat crosses. Typically, the superstition is of a black cat crossing your path. This time it's just a regular orange cat here. And it kind of even seems like improvise, like they didn't even, like, plan for this cat to be here. But so now, like, now that Dougie cursed Asher, and he himself was saying at the dinner table, oh, this cursing is nonsense, which is kind of flip flopping, because in earlier, as Asher pointed out earlier, Dougie was concerned about the curse when they were looking over the video of the initial moment of Nala cursing Asher. There was like some static on the video, right? There was like some kind of interference, and he thought that that could be that the curse was applied to him as well. And at the dinner, he denied it, but now it seems like yeah, he does have some superstitions. He does maybe like feel like there's some truth to the idea of the curse, and now he's like he himself is cursing Asher because he feels like he needs to get back at him for Asher getting all mad about the batter situation and pretending to be a good guy, and then like using that low blow of him mentioning how he killed his wife, like, but of course he does it in the privacy of his own little car here, right? So whatever happens in the coming episodes, that whatever bad thing happens to Asher, he'll wonder, if it was that little Nala girl who was behind it, but then the audience could also be like, oh, but isn't it really just, or could it be Dougie who's the cause of it? But isn't it just really like the downfall of these like privileged people trying to thinking they're good and doing good, but they're actually like sowing their own destruction, as we see in this show. Which interesting. We'll see what the meaning of the title, the curse, really means. Oops, what is that? Okay, so then, so then he drives away, right? And like during that whole moment, I guess like I wasn't as tense about or the idea of like them crashing or anything, because it definitely feels like they sobered up, after that incident. So not too concerned, but maybe in the future episode. It seems like they're building up. It's almost like like a foreshadowing. Like they're just it could either be like a subversion of that idea of that, like, oh, let's foreshadow the idea that there's going to be a car accident, because of Dougie drunk driving, and now twice in the show he's taking that breathalyzer test while driving, which is such a scary imagery, right? So you would think that maybe next week or the final episode, there's going to be something involved with that, but it could also be a red herring. Could also be something kind of to throw us off, just to play with our expectations a bit. We'll see. And now we're back. We're here back to the house, the art house, and we are the art party, and we get Whitney finally gets the answer she's been mulling over in her head. The question of what was that art show all about that Kara had about her giving her that slice of turkey? Was she supposed to eat it? Was she not supposed to eat it? She finally confronts Kara about it in front of the camera. So now Kara feels a little bit more compelled to actually explain her art. But before that, she wants Kara to praise Whitney's art, to kind of, and this scene is being recorded with the audio wise as well. The guy said the audio was picked up at the end here. Basically, she wants to show that, like, oh, look, this native artist appreciates my work as well and is so happy to show her art in my house. But of course, as we see, from our point of view as the viewer of the show, this is obviously super staged and really awkward and inauthentic. And Kara obviously is uncomfortable with it, but she's getting paid to do it. So she uses her words in a very precise way to not like outwardly like criticize Whitney too much, right? But she thinks carefully about them, and and pretty much says what she needs to say and says what she means. She's not really, at the end here. I hear though she is kind of repeating actually exactly what what Whitney wants. Um, which is weird because like you'd think Whitney would be aware of like how she's being, how Karis is like seeing her. Like she seems to like not be aware of how she looks, right? Coaching her friend into saying like into complimenting her. And again, she's probably thinking like, oh, like we could have this conversation off camera and you would say similar things. So let's just like recreate that for the camera, and let's just make it perfect, for this for my show. And it's like Whitney is kind of lying to herself as well about the whole situation. But then like Kara ends up telling her about what that art piece meant, which is what we discussed when in that first episode. The idea of her slicing off this meat and giving it to people because that's how she feels as a native person, that she's constantly being asked to give part of herself, and then people like Whitney consume it for their own benefit or their own enjoyment, without considering the harm it has on the people, on the native community, etc., etc. And then in a way like she says it plainly, and you can tell that Whitney's like in her head contemplating like, it's like, oh wait, is she like, was that whole piece like a critique on me? Was I the bad guy in that situation? But all she can say, for the camera and for, in a way to kind of like keep her sanity, right, and not go ballistic about being portrayed as like, an exploiter of the native people. She's like, oh, that's so beautiful, repeated line from what she said earlier to Kara's friend, because she has nothing meaningful to contribute. She can only take, and all she can say is that, oh yeah, that was beautiful words, beautiful phrasing. Let's move on. And now like she doesn't even want to record anything else. I think this definitely kind of like got into Whitney's head a little bit more than she wanted, and she's probably like a little bit depressed in her mind right now and wants to like just get it over with and maybe escape the situation, right, and just like think more about the show and how she's being, and just about thinking more about the artifice of the whole thing instead of like dwelling and really thinking about how she herself is exploiting her friends here, right, or acquaintances. Meanwhile, Kara is also kind of like thinking like, oh shit, what have I put myself into here? Like, she's like uncomfortable at the end here. We see her face contemplating like, oh shit, like I guess this is what it means to be a successful artist. I have to pretend to be the friend of this gentrifier, who's exploiting my culture, my people, and exploiting me. It's just just the face of accepting compromise as an artist in this white capitalist hellscape. But yeah, like this is probably just like the most revealing scene of the series so far, revealing, what kind of person Whitney really is, and being like told to interface who she is, what she's doing, and her just kind of like brushing it off as like yeah, and that's beautiful, and like that doesn't apply to me. I'm not one of those, I'm not one of those bad white people who take advantage of people of color, of people below them, etc., etc. And that's what this whole little scene was about. It was just her um, putting on a show to portray herself as the Green Queen, right? The the best kind of ally, the best kind of artist. And I wonder if that whole audio will, if she'll decide later that let's not have that audio in the show, actually, because people might actually get the wrong idea about me. We'll see. We get back to a scene of Dougie driving, and this moment here, I was like, oh shit, is this the car accident scene? Are we getting is Dougie gonna get in a car accident? And then guess what? Then it's Whitney driving. It's like, uh-oh. And my head's spinning now. It's like, oh shit, Dougie's gonna run into Whitney here, and that's gonna be a major cliffhanger for the upcoming last 2 episodes. But no, it's just them driving back home. Maybe we'll pick up next week with them driving still, but no accident here. What we do end on is the racist statue here at the curb of Kara's place, right? She's throwing it out. Whitney spent all this money to get rid of it, to show her support. She wants to portray herself as like not being a racist, person. So, she gave that statue to Kara to reappropriate it into some kind of artwork, to commentary against racism. But Kara just like, oh no, this is stupid, I don't want it, and I'm not gonna reappropriate that, especially coming from Whitney. And she just throws it out, and it snaps. Kind of satisfying to see that little head snap there. that ugly little statue there. And in the background we do hear Bob Dylan playing, and it's one of the a B-side track, or an old track, I think, or actually it was released, I think, in a bootleg compilation or something. Or it's the Basement Tapes it was released on. But it was an early track, and I'm not quite sure of the meaning, but he does talk about wanting to roam free. There's like a woman at home, and she wants to roam, and he says how I'm never ever far from home, but I'm never gonna cease to roam. About also like, in the song is called Santa Fe, which is where Whitney and Asher met. So I think it's just the idea of like Whitney and Asher representing these folk who like come into a new home, a new community, and they don't feel it doesn't feel at home to them, or it isn't quite homely, and they're going to continue to roam, and they're going to continue to maybe go from home to home, area to area, and just like take what they want, and continue to roam, and not really care so much about the destruction that they're leaving behind in their wake, right? They're constantly roaming, and taking what they need for themselves as they go along, something like that. I don't know. You can interpret different ways, I guess, but it was an interesting interesting little ending there with that Bob Dylan song. And that's it. That's where we leave off. So yeah, I think definitely, like I said, top tier episode of the series so far. We got 2 more episodes left after this, so things could really take a huge turn next week. We'll see. Usually the last couple episodes are really important to a series, really nail down what the show's about. And I think this episode really kind of nailed it down too. Like, with Whitney, of course, like showing off like how she's trying to manufacture a good appearance for herself, and she's using her money really to get these friendships and to be part and to feel part of this community, where in fact it's only because of her money and because of her privilege that she can do that. At the same time, everyone around her, like Kara, her friend, they all can see for what she really is, which we actually do see in this episode more clearly than before, in that little argument early on in the episode with Whitney and Asher, where she starts mocking Asher for trying to be the good guy when he in fact isn't. Just like her, like, oh, that's like, we're just you think you're good but you're not, etc., etc. Which also is what Dougie was kind of bringing up to Asher in on their little date, right? And so that the whole, when it comes to Asher, he's trying to at least similar in a different way than Whitney is, trying to be the good husband, be a good member of the community, a business owner, etc., etc. And yeah, but of course, in the previous episode, he was jotting down some notes. He was like, he recorded that conversation he had with Whitney. Like, he's trying to improve in his own little way. And I think this episode kind of like maybe made Whitney out to seem like worse than Asher. And I feel like, I wonder if we'll have a similar scene with Asher in the next couple episodes, like we saw Whitney here, where he kind of reveals himself to somebody in a more clear way of, like, how he's the bad guy, But yeah, we'll see. And there's also conversations about just the aesthetic of the show that I've been hearing, about how it's shot, like a documentary. All these scenes are like distant, like the camera's like distant, like it's a zoom in, of course, but and the idea that, like, is there another show within a show going on here, where, like, is Asher perhaps involved, and this is just a theory, involved in, like, and having a separate crew or something, like recording what's going on, because he himself recorded the audio of that, like I said, of him and Whitney having that conversation, or that fight. And then he's taking notes. Like, is he doing that throughout the whole series? He's been doing that? Has he been recording? I don't necessarily think so. I think it's maybe more likely that Dougie is the one that's having, the different camera crews around. Maybe he said that he wasn't gonna come to this art party, right? But maybe he did have someone else, outside zooming in through the windows, recording for his own idea of what the show is, right? Because as we see with his with him interviewing Asher and Whitney and stuff, it seems like he has his own idea of what the show is, right? And what he wants it to be. And he's probably working, behind the scenes on that, while kind of, placating also Whitney and her idea, like hiring like that camera dude to go to that party, but he's really more concerned with the drama between them, and like making a show that perhaps he feels like could win an Emmy or something, not just a silly like reality show, right? Um, and so is he working behind the scenes? Is there Are we gonna have a reveal later? He's gonna show them like all these scenes of them being recorded while they weren't aware, and then you know we get and then of course that's gonna upset them, and maybe that could be a huge thing. I don't know. That could be a twist. I don't know, but it could also just be an aesthetic choice. Where like they just it's more like just a commentary on documentary filmmaking as well as reality TV filmmaking, and just how that blends the lines between fact and fiction and all that. So we'll see, but definitely very interesting series. Um, Good performances. I feel like Emma Stone has been getting a lot of praise for her work on Poor Things, which is pretty good. You know, really good performance there in that movie. But the layers, you know, of this character, Whitney, going from like, pretending to be a friendly ally to like, bursting out and like mocking Asher, this fine line between like playing this role, but also like in a way where like the audience can tell like she's like pretending, like she's not being authentic. Like that fine line, those different layers she's going through here and cycling through, it's pretty impressive. So I feel like it may even be more. You can even argue it's more impressive than what she did in Poor Things. And we still got 2 episodes left. We'll see where it goes. But yeah, definitely some good stuff. And that is episode 8. See you next week.